Hey folks, Pro Libertate. Thank you again for watching. Today I wanted to discuss this article I came across on social media. It's from the Washington Compost, where democracy dies in darkness. I guess it's their job to, spread the cloak of darkness. All right. Evangelicals have abandoned their mission in favor of Trump. And so right off the bat, two things should stand out. It's the Washington Post, and it's another, cucked evangelical type of headline, right? Where it's a guy, you already know what the article is going to say before you even read it. Right? These things are like boilerplate. You just fill in the current dates. That's all you got to do. And they just write themselves. These kind of articles are, they're very predictable, mechanically written. There's no heart or soul in them whatsoever. You see these all the time. But anyway, so evangelicals have abandoned their mission in favor of Trump. And I wanted to go through this because this is, an increasingly growing sort of sentiment in the broad evangelical world. That there's some sort of morality that we're supposed to be upholding. And it just so happens to be tilted to the left, right, when it comes to engaging the political realm. So let's get into this. This is by Ben Howe, and he's the author of a new book called Immoral Majority: Why Evangelicals Choose Political Power Over Christian Values. Okay, so let's see this. As the debate to how to handle applicants for refugee status in the U.S. southern border gained urgency in recent months, Pew Research Religion waded into the social media fray on July 7th with a tweet about the results of a poll the organization conducted last year. Pew reported, and online commentators quickly noted, that white evangelical Protestants were the least likely group, amid results sorted by age, race, education, and religion, to say that the United States has a responsibility to accept refugees into the country. Okay? 68% of white evangelical Protestants said the country has no responsibility for refugees. No other demographic group came within 10 points of that result. Okay? And so this is supposed to be an indictment. This is supposed to be an indictment of white evangelicals. Okay, this is a terrible thing that we don't see that we have a responsibility to refugees, to bring them all in. Right? Difficult to believe from a 2019 vantage, its current year, but some evangelical leaders had been taken aback when the Pew results were originally released in May 2018 and urged their flocks toward change. But back then, the main question about refugees concerned those fleeing the brutal civil war in Syria. When faced, really it wasn't a civil war, it was a coup attempt by Western intelligence trying to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. That's what was really going on over there. And thankfully, Trump, the agent of peace, wouldn't commit ground troops over there, despite the urgings from all of his neocon advisors like John Bolton, just beating the war drums to get in there. That was one of the things Hillary Clinton said during her campaign, that when she's president, one of her first orders of business was going to be to go to war with Syria. But I guess war is fine if you're a Christian and your guy's like, what the crap is this guy's name again? I already forgot it. He's a forgettable person. Ben Howe. If your guy's like Ben Howie, then, war is fine. And going and invading other countries, that's fine. But not wanting to take refugees and asylum seekers, that's not fine. We have a duty to bring all these people in. Let's just go on. When faced with a potential conflict between prominent evangelicals' biblical pro-refugee arguments and President Trump's opposition, Brian Newman of Pepperdine University noted in the Post, the vast majority of white evangelicals choose Trump. Okay, so again, here we have the false dilemma. You can either have the Bible or you can have Trump, right? So here's the false dilemma. And Notice how, I mean, this guy's not going to quote the Bible at all in this article, but he just says that there's biblical arguments for a country just letting in droves of refugees. Okay? I think you're going to have a hard time finding that in the Bible, where a culture needs to receive another culture into its midst and just accept that. And that's actually Christian. I mean, I don't know where you're going to get that from in the Bible, but he just says that it's there, right? Because there's biblical passages on compassion and loving your neighbor and things like that, but that has nothing to do with immigration policy. I can love my neighbor and still have a border. I can love my neighbor and still have a fence like I have all over my property here that I've put up. Right? There's no contradiction here. Part of loving my neighbor is me putting up a fence, because my most immediate neighbors are my family and my children. And so I put up a fence, so that the cars driving on the road, this is some guy's property. You don't just drive over there or whatever. And we have some, wild animals here. And it's nice to keep them out. I like to keep these animals out of my garden. Keep them from eating up my garden. I have a bunch of chickens over there. You probably hear them time and time again in my video. I like to keep the coyotes from eating them. And they have a fence around their yard. So it's to protect my neighbors and the things that I care about from things that may do them harm. Anyway, fences are very biblical. There's a whole book in the Bible called Nehemiah, and it deals with wall building and fences. A year later, with the focal point on refugees from Central America, in much greater numbers and more likely to be vilified by the president, evangelical leaders are largely as one with their congregations. As largely as one with their... what kind of sentence is that? I want to recraft that again, Ben Howe. Consider the response in June when Russell Moore, president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, the public policy arm of the Southern Baptist Convention, ventured this observation on Twitter. The reports of the conditions for migrant children at the border should shock all of our consciences. Those created in the image of God should be treated with dignity and compassion, especially those seeking refuge from violence back home. We can do better than this. Okay, pause right there. So these refugees coming over the southern border from Central America, what violence back home are they fleeing? Right? A lot of these people were coming up from Honduras, Mexico, and Guatemala, and places like that. Last I checked, those places aren't war-torn. So they're economic migrants. They're seeking economic opportunity. Okay? So they're not really refugees at that point. A refugee is somebody who's fleeing like a genocide or just war. Or severe famine, something like that. That would be a refugee. And just coming to America illegally and, for economic purposes, that's not a refugee. And so right off the bat, he's already buying a lie. And then we have the reports of the conditions. That's what he's basing this on. Okay, so what reports? The reports from the lefty media that's calling the holding facilities concentration camps. The reports from the lefty media, that was saying, Trump is literally Hitler and he's running concentration camps on the southern border. That's the reports we're going off of. Which ones? All right, the fake pictures, of children in cages that were really from years before the Trump administration. The fake pictures of children separated from their parents when their parents, these people aren't even really their parents. It's like a mule who's engaged in child sex trafficking. Come on, guys. This is the thing, and this is why I absolutely hate articles like this. This is how the left is basically cucking Christians. Okay. And I use that very, pointedly. The left is cucking Christians here on this sort of stuff, right? They're using our own morality and our own ethics and our own virtue against us as a weapon. And guys like Ben Howe don't understand that, or they're more than willing to bow the knee. You got to understand they're using these things as weapons against us and trying to guilt Christians into not supporting Trump. Let's continue with the article. Moore's comments didn't sit well with Jerry Falwell. They don't sit well with me either. I'm not a Jerry Falwell fan, but they don't sit well with me either. Inheritor of his father's Christian empire, Jerry Falwell Jr., president of Liberty University and prominent evangelical figure. Who are you, at Dr. Moore? Falwell tweeted. Have you ever made a payroll? Have you ever built an organization of any type from scratch? What gives you the authority to speak on any issue? I'm being serious. You're nothing but an employee, a bureaucrat. That's awesome. Some were dismayed by Falwell's response. Yeah, the weak people that have been cucked by guys like Ben Howe. Okay? But you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone paying attention in the past few years who was surprised by it. Okay, Falwell is one of several leaders in the modern evangelical movement who have helped solidify Christian principles as synonymous with the Republican agenda, and specifically with the president's agenda. Okay, so this is the way people on the left always talk. They always say stupid things like, God's not a Republican or a Democrat, as though it's some profound insight. Okay, I highly doubt that Mr. Falwell, for all of his faults, would in any way, shape, or form agree with that caricature of what he's trying to achieve. I highly doubt he would say that Christian principles are synonymous with the Republican agenda. I highly doubt that. I'm sure he has plenty of complaints against the Republicans, just not as many or the same ones that Ben Howe has. Okay? Trump, of course, welcomes this way of thinking. Speaking to an assembly of Christian leaders as a presidential candidate in 2016, Trump said, "You can pray for your leaders, and I agree with that. Pray for everyone. But what you really have to do is pray to get everybody out to vote for one specific person. We can't be, again, politically correct and say we pray for all of our leaders, because all of your leaders are selling Christianity down the tubes, selling evangelicals down the tubes." I don't know what about that's not true. he's campaigning to win evangelical votes, and he's saying, yeah, pray for me, and I want to be an ally of evangelicals. You think Hillary Clinton was going to be an ally of evangelicals? I mean, come on, Ben Howe. Like, how is that a bad statement? Like, this is a politician campaigning in June of 2016 to win the presidency, and he's making a pitch to evangelicals. What's wrong with that? Yet the idea that without Republicans, Christianity is lost is not unique to the Trump era. Okay, who the heck is saying that? We don't need the Republicans. I'm not a Republican. But guys like Ben Howe make me want to vote for Trump. I'm a flaming libertarian. A flaming libertarian. With a very strong theonomic backbone, I hasten to add. So I don't know what the heck he's saying. Christianity has superseded the Republican Party. The Republican Party is just a hiccup. It's a blip on history. The church is here forever. I don't know what he's talking about. He's just tilting at windmills. He just creates this straw man that people believe that without the Republican Party, Christianity's lost. Nobody thinks like that. But keep beating up on that scarecrow, Ben. Keep tilting at that windmill and calling it a giant. Show us how courageous you are against that windmill that you've erected and called a giant. The merging of evangelicalism and republicanism has been underway for decades. It is simply more visible and pronounced under this president, primarily because evangelical support for Trump requires a much higher degree of cognitive dissonance. So you say, Ben. So you say. That is, fighting for conservative Christian values by unquestioningly supporting someone who not only doesn't share them, but has lived most of his life actively and unapologetically in opposition to them. Okay, let's hit the timeout button here and just ask, which president in recent history could you not say that about? Which president in recent history does that not apply to? I mean, Barack Obama lit the White House up like a rainbow flag. I guess that's Christian values in celebration of gay mirage, right? George Bush, he was a horrible person too. He pitched himself as a Christian, but he had a rough past as well. He was doing a bunch of coke and boozing and stuff, right? How about Bill Clinton? Was it okay for evangelicals to support him, Ben Howe? Was it okay for evangelicals to support George Bush the First? How about Ronald Reagan, the Playboy actor, right? Was that okay for Christians to support? Was he a good guy? Were these all moral Christian people? What are we saying? So, again, they single out Trump as though he's particularly reprehensible. And that's only the case because he's telling the truth on things that you're not supposed to tell the truth on. He's telling the truth on immigration. He tells the truth on Islam, really. Right? And probably my favorite Trump moment was when he was in a debate with Hillary Clinton and he dared to tell the truth on abortion. Republicans in the past have just got up and said, yeah, I'm against abortion, right? Trump, in that debate, not only said he was against abortion, he described what it was. He said he's against the murdering of a child in the mother's womb. He described it. And it was beautiful. I'm like, yes, that guy gets it. That guy gets it. Guys like Ben Howe don't get it, right? They're more worried about scoring virtue points with the left by being open borders, basically, than they are with the genocide that's literally occurring right now. And these people being held in, less than ideal conditions at the border, they're not being murdered. But we have children being murdered. Okay? Anyway, single issue voter. That's what they all say now, right? But, if you can't get that right, I don't really care what else you have to say. I don't really care what a candidate has to say if they can't get the murder of children right. Somebody's fine with murdering babies. I don't really care about their economic policies. I don't really care what they have to say about the healthcare system. I don't really care what they have to say about foreign policy. If they can't figure out that killing babies is not okay, nothing else they have to say is really interesting to me. You're already in the category of a horrible person. Okay? Now, he just says Trump is horrible and it requires cognitive dissonance to support him. He doesn't explain how. He just says it. This is another thing that people on the left always do. They just say things. They never actually have to explain how they can justify saying such a thing. We just all know Trump is horrible and that it's antithetical to Christian values, right? That is fighting for conservative Christian values by unquestioningly supporting someone who not only doesn't share them, but has lived most of his life actively and unapologetically in opposition to them. Again, who could that not be said about as far as presidents in recent history? And John Kennedy, the playboy, he was doing meth basically during his presidency to fight his Addison's disease, and probably just because he enjoyed getting high. And he's doinking all sorts of women in the White House. It's just like who are you going to point to, Ben? Which of the last presidents in the last 50 years embodied Christian values that you couldn't make that statement about? So it's special pleading when you point to Trump and act like he's a unique case and that Christians have no business, can never support somebody like that. Those are the only kind of people running for office, Ben. The broken people, right? They're the morally flawed people. I would love to have a white knight Christian come riding in on a white horse, wearing a Knights Templar cross, and he's ready to reconquer Washington for Jesus. That'd be awesome. I'd love that guy, right? But in lieu of the absence of those kind of guys, and given the fact that most of the options are guys like Ben Howe or somebody like Trump who stands up to the left, I'm going to take Trump if those are my options. And evangelicals got what they wanted, a president who appoints conservative judges and up and down the federal judiciary, including the 2 Supreme Court justices so far. Stomaching Trump's behavior and rhetoric. I don't stomach it. I enjoy it. I love his frank speaking. I love how he doesn't speak in political speak. I absolutely love that. It was very refreshing to see somebody come in like Andrew Dice Clay and just start ripping on all these fake plastic politicians with their coached speeches, their coiffed hair, their just for men hair coloring, right? I absolutely love that. And so I do not stomach it. I cherish it. it's enjoying. That's because I'm not an effeminate evangelical. This is a major problem in the church, is that we think that Christian values are basically just effeminacy. It's like you just have to be like this emotional woman that's crying over the plight of migrants, on the border. And hey, buddy, one of our cats is over here. Hey. Anyway, so let's just continue. Stomaching Trump's behavior and rhetoric. I love it. I absolutely loved when he was just making fun of Jeb Bush. Those are my favorite moments in Trump's campaign. And he just made a total mockery out of Jeb Bush. And if he wants to talk about, evangelicals blindly supporting the Republican Party, I mean, that's why Trump was so refreshing, is that he made a mockery out of this plastic Republican Party that just counts on evangelical votes, but doesn't do anything remotely to own up to the promises they made to the evangelicals during the campaign. Okay, which could generously be described as not characteristic of a Christian. I disagree with that. So basically you want this effeminate guy up there who just cowers every time the left shakes their fist at him. That's the way the Republican Party has been for like 30 years. And so Trump has been refreshing. He's a fighter, and we love that about him. The deplorables like myself love that about him. Has been rewarding with much improved prospects for stricter abortion laws and achieving other long-sought goals in what conservative Christians regard as a desperate and escalating culture war. Okay? I don't know. I bet you Ben's one of these guys that thinks that we shouldn't be fighting the culture war, right? That the culture war is just a figment of the imaginations of the evangelical right. Okay? You're starting to hear more and more people talk like that. And that's just cuck talk. That's just somebody who's giving up and just giving up ground. They don't care. They're not going to fight because there's no enemy to fight, but then they're going to bitch about people who are in the trenches fighting. Okay. The evangelical embrace of Trump has been an electoral positive for the Republican Party. But for those, the Republican Party's had the evangelical vote for as long as I've been alive. But for those who would evangelize, this new reality is tragic. Now here's his pitch. It is hard to pitch faith as a function of voting. Okay, nobody's doing that. Okay? Voting is one of the ways we express our faith. Okay? But faith is not a function of voting. Okay? Nobody's saying that. But we should seek to have a Christian government. Okay? And given the desert, the wasteland we're in, Trump is the closest approximation we can get to that at the moment. I mean, what do you want? Hillary Clinton? You think Jeffrey Epstein would have got arrested if Hillary Clinton was in office? No. The pedos would still be running around. So, I mean, I could flip this. I could do the same thing to this guy. What do you support the pedophile rings, Ben? Come on. Christians are instructed in the Bible. Now, this is his pitch. Let me just let him say his pitch, and then I'll respond to it, and we can move on. Christians are instructed in the Bible to attract people to Christ, to convince them, to witness to them. We're meant to speak the truth in a way that invites strangers in, welcomes them, makes them feel loved. Okay. To care for the least of these is a Christian value. Expressing and demonstrating it is spreading the word. That's called evangelizing. A movement that based itself on the term, but now embraces its antithesis, is becoming difficult to recognize. Okay. He completely fails to show how evangelization is antithetical to supporting Trump. I evangelize and I talk to people all the time. It's just, I'm a Christian. And so just in casual conversation, people at work or wherever I'm at, if we're hanging out, talking, they'll ask me what I think about certain things. And my perspective is always thoroughly Christian. Because that's who I am. That's what I am. Okay. And, people ask me, about my, we'll be out and people will make comments about my kids. Like, my kids are well behaved. Like, wow, your kids are really well behaved, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah. We homeschool, blah, blah, blah. And go through all these things. That's just who I am. And so evangelism for me is just being me. Okay. It's just me talking with people. And, I'm always wearing my Christian badge because that's what I am. I'm always wearing it. I tell people the gospel, you need to repent, believe in Jesus, and that's how you're saved. It's just, I'm not at all ashamed of that. But at the same time, I want a border wall. I don't see how those things are antithetical. I mean, so basically what this guy is arguing for without saying it is open borders. And that in order to evangelize, in order to actually be fulfilling the call to be evangelists, we need to have open borders and bring in all these people from the third world so we can tell them about Jesus. That's basically what he's saying. And without saying it. And that Trump's antithetical to that because he wants a border wall. I fail to see how the two ideas are in tension with one another. I mean, you can evangelize people all day. You can go to their countries. We can provide aid for them in their countries. That's what we should really want, honestly. If there's problems over in Uganda, we can send missionaries over there and help them out. People don't have clean drinking water. We don't just send boats over and load people up and bring them over here. No, we go over to their countries, teach them how to make, clean wells and filter their water, and give them these means and the tools to survive if they can't figure it out, right? That's loving your neighbor across the world. We don't have to bring in the world in order to love the world. It's so ridiculous. And honestly, I'm just tired of guys like Ben Howe. I'm just tired of their stupid rhetoric and their really weak, effeminate kind of Christianity. The Christianity that doesn't have a backbone. And this is nothing new. Ben Howe is not unique. I don't even know who he is. He's a writer for Washington Post. That's about all I need to know. He has some stupid book, The Immoral Majority, Why Evangelicals Chose Political Power Over Christian Values. Again, those things are not in competition with one another, right? We should want a Christian nation. We should want a Christian state. We should want the state to be thoroughly Christian. What's wrong with that? How is that antithetical to Christian values? To want the state to be Christian, right? Now, I know Trump, so these guys want to quickly reply and say, well, Trump's he's an immoral person. You think Trump embodies Christian values? Well, he embodies Christian values a heck of a lot better than Hillary Clinton. He embodies Christian values a heck of a lot better than Barack Obama in his celebration of sodomy. Okay? I mean, it's what I'm saying. It's like, what are we talking about? He embodies Christian values a heck of a lot better than George Bush and his invasion of country after country. Right? Trump has been very restrained in his foreign policy. He's been very clearly against abortion. He has appointed pro-life judges. Okay? And during Trump's presidency, state after state has been able to basically outlaw abortion without, they just create high restrictions against Planned Parenthood to the point where they just can't do business anymore in the state. And so abortion is de facto illegal without overturning Roe v. Wade per se. That's all happened under Trump. And it's happened because of him. So I fail to see what this guy is complaining about. And he never really explains. He just takes it as a given that Trump does not embody, that support of Trump is antithetical to Christian values. I mean, yeah, I know the guy, he was a womanizer. I know. That's bad. I agree. I would have liked it if Trump was a faithful man married to one woman and all of that. I would like that too. But I mean, this is what we got. We're trying to, God can draw straight lines with crooked timbers. Okay? Another similar article, and I'm not going to read it all, but I just bring it up to show that Ben Howe's not unique. This actually affects Christian theologians. One of the more popular Christian theologians is John Piper. And this is his 2017 article in January 20th. So this is right around the inauguration time. Okay? And so he cranks out this idiotic article too. How to live under an unqualified president. And my immediate reaction when I read this, a couple years ago almost, was, hey, John, did you say this when Barry was taking the oath of office? Did you say this stuff when George Bush took the oath of office? Did you say this stuff when Bill Clinton took the oath of office? No. So what's unique about Trump that bothers these weak Christians? These guys who are basically cucking to the left. And it's because Trump is a fighter. Evangelical, there's a big part of evangelicalism that are not fighters. And so they recoil when they see a masculine man who's standing up and fighting. I mean, not to pick on John Piper too much, but he doesn't look like he could bench more than 25 pounds. Even probably like in his 30s. Just saying. That's just something that there's something to be said for that. Trump could probably bench 100 or so, but even now. But but I'll just read the first couple paragraphs. Today we will inaugurate a man to the presidency of the United States who is morally unqualified to be there. This is important to say just now, because not to see it and feel it will add to the collapsing vision of leadership that enabled him to be nominated and elected. So again, we have this evangelical guy lamenting the election of Trump. Not only that, but if we do not see and feel the nature and weight of this sorrow, we're supposed to be sorrowful over the election of Trump. Oh my gosh. We will not know how to pray for his presidency or to speak as sojourners and exiles whose pattern of life is defined in heaven, not by the mood of the culture. My goodness. It's just so dumb. And John Piper's gotten really bad over the years. He's got a bunch of dumb articles against the Second Amendment, how he would never own a gun, how he couldn't, when he was faced with the question of, so there's a guy in your house. He's broken into your house at night. You know, your typical question, which affects people in the real world all the time. Guy's busted into your house at night. He's wielding a knife, and he says, "I'm here to rape your daughter." What do you do, Pastor John? You gonna shoot him? John Piper said, "I just don't think I could. I just don't think that I could shoot that guy and send him to hell, because I know obviously this guy's gonna go to hell if I shoot and kill him. I can't do that." This is what he said. And I'm like, my goodness, John, you have a duty as a Christian and as a father to protect life. You have a duty to protect life. And a lot of times, protecting life means stopping a bad guy. You're not the one sending him to hell, John. God is. That's up to God. And I thought he was a Calvinist, too. I thought he's a 5-point Calvinist who believes in predestination. So, you know that guy, he's not going to go to hell just because you shot him, John. Why would you even say that? It's like, if he's going to hell, it's because God's sending him there. It's so dumb. And, this is one of the things. I remember I used to listen to a lot of John Piper sermons. And one of the things I do remember coming up in his sermons, and I was kind of, that's weird, whatever, is he would mention, so I was on the road the other day, and I was listening to NPR, and they said, The thing that stuck out to me, I was listening to NPR. That's always a red flag for me. I mean, if you can listen to NPR and tolerate that, there's something wrong. The way they talk on there, where they speak softly into the mic and talk with a really low tone and with a lisp, with a pseudo-intellectual tone the whole time they speak. That sort of thing. I mean, if you can stomach that, the pseudo-intellectualism of NPR and the airs they put on, then I think something's wrong. Something's eating away at your worldview as a Christian. But so here's his little list of Trump's reasons. The reasons Trump is disqualified: bragged about committing adultery, mocked and disrespected women, the disabled, and even prisoners of war. So okay. So there was this guy. Trump didn't even know that he was disabled. He was just doing that to make fun of the guy because he's basically saying the guy's a spaz. Mocked and disrespected women. See, notice how everything is just vague. He does have a link to the disabled one, but I know what he's talking about. And prisoners of war. John McCain. Okay, John McCain should be mocked. I'm sorry. So, John Piper's coming to the defense of John freaking McCain. Trump acted like a con artist. For example, Trump University. There was no con. There's all sorts of people who went through Trump University who thought it was great. How's that a con? Acted like a demagogue. Okay, that's just, your interpretation. Appealing to popular desires and prejudices rather than rational arguments, notably in the debates. Come on, dude. These are all really subjective things. What are the character problems? There's nothing here. I mean, except for like the adultery thing. Okay? Look, here's the problem, John. You got a problem with Trump making fun of people. That's what the demagogue comment is, the disrespecting women, the disabled and the prisoners of war comment. That's what all of that is. One who acts shamelessly proud, boasts. Nobody's read the Bible more than me. Okay? He's just having fun, John. You can't take a joke. And so so all this stuff though is so this is when Trump's making fun of people. And here's the problem, John. How often does the Bible make fun of certain people? Right? So David, he goes out to meet Goliath. And he's like, "Who's this uncircumcised Philistine?" Right? How's that sit with you, John? How's that sit with you? David, when he goes out to challenge Goliath, he immediately starts talking about his penis. Huh. That's weird. Is David unqualified, John? Is David unfit for office as king? Would you say that about David? Because he's going around making fun of people? David was a con artist. He started his sheep herding business and only went off to, to go and fight Goliath when he should have been over there with the sheep. That's a con man. He conned his dad out of doing his duties. He should have been at home. Something. I'm just saying, it's so stupid. These are just a bunch of petty complaints. Nobody's saying Trump is like this righteous Christian man. Nobody is saying that. But he's not like this moral degenerate. And you got all these weak Christians like John Piper that can't help but see it that way. Because they walk around like this and, and they never would insult anybody. The Apostle Paul insulted the Judaizers. Again, you're sticking with the penis jokes. These guys who were wanting circumcision and trying to impose it on the early Christians, saying, hey, in order to follow Jesus, you need to be circumcised. Paul said, hey, you guys like circumcision so much? I wish you guys would just cut the whole thing off. I mean, come on. Jesus himself didn't back off from making fun of the Pharisees. Made fun of them all the time. I mean, he'd be in a group of people and he'd just be like, hey, let me tell you a story. There's a bunch of guys standing around here, right over there. They like having those broad phylacteries. They like making their prayers in public. They like it when you see them doing religious things. Take a look at that guy right there. He's the bad guy. You whitewash tombs. Herod's calling to visit Jesus. Yeah, you go tell that old fox that da-da-da-da-da. He's making fun of him. Jesus made fun of people. And this is the thing that guys like John Piper would never own up to and face. Is that a lot of the Bible has rhetoric closer to Trump than closer to Trump's rhetoric than the rhetoric that you would be comfortable with, John. So my question then is, why are you holier than God? Acts shamelessly proud, boasts. I mean, he's just joking around and saying stupid things, I know, Trump says stupid things. My main problem, said Randy Alcorn, is not that Donald Trump says what he thinks. My main problem is with what he actually thinks, especially his obsession with outward appearance, sexiness, superficiality, wealth. So what, liking beautiful women is bad? Superficiality, wealth, and his own status and accomplishments, and his quickness to berate and insult people and seek revenge on his critics. Okay, if somebody punches you, you're not supposed to punch back? His quickness to seek revenge on his critics? So somebody's, saying horrible things about you, you just don't punch back? That's what people love about him, is that he punches back. And guys like Randy Alcorn and John Piper don't want people who punch back. That's not Christian. It's not Christian to punch back. I mean, John Piper wouldn't shoot a rapist. He said it himself. He said he doesn't want to own a gun, and he couldn't, because he knows he could never shoot somebody if he had to. Insane. Absolutely insane. These guys, like I'm saying, great sermons from John Piper. Great theological, stuff. But when it comes to engaging culture, they're absolutely useless. Guys like John Piper are absolutely useless. Guys like, Howe on the previous article, absolutely useless. They just cuck and sell out to the left. They're not fighters, and they actually have a problem with people who are fighters. They're absolutely useless in regard to all of these things. They're a major reason why the culture war is being lost. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and take care.